question. If you're just joining us, was my son giggles and smiles when encountering challenging situations, when we're helping him with his homework, or when he did something wrong and the parent is trying to explain. Sometimes he says he's thinking about something funny, or he feels stressed. We feel annoyed as parents when he does this while we're trying to teach. He doesn't seem to be able to control himself. We are concerned in the real world, this kind of inappropriate response can easily turn off the teacher, future boss, peer. His giggling can be misconstrued as laughing at the teacher or a peer. We don't know what to do about this. Help, he's 13, and this has been going on since elementary school.
And so the summary of my response was that you really need to identify the function of this behavior, and it could be a variety of different things. Obviously, it could be that he's doing this behavior. I don't think he's thinking of something funny, because it particularly occurs right when it's homework time. Or some demand is placed. So to me, it sounds like it's more of an avoidance type function. So he's trying to do something else in order to delay the process of homework, or in order to engage you in some sort of dialogue, and so on and so forth. So the idea that I suggested was to definitely not engage with him in any way. In other words, set up a homework situation as normal, ask him to do the homework, and again, as I had said, I'm not sure if you are very involved with every single question, or if you hand him his homework and step back. Either way, make sure that you have a limited time frame for him to do his homework. So for instance, set a timer perhaps, so that he doesn't use other delay tactics. And also essentially give him the assignment or homework. If he giggles, you don't react at all. You just continue doing exactly what you would do as if he was not giggling. You don't address it, you don't ask him about it, you just move forward and therefore, if it is a function of avoidance, it won't work anymore, and he will stop doing that. If it isn't a function of avoidance, then potentially it could be just attention seeking, in which case that would work as well, because you're not attending to it. And otherwise, you really need to have a behavior analyst present in order to do an actual functional behavior assessment and determine exactly why it is he's doing that. It's often our kids do these things because they're just trying to kind of interact with you rather than do the homework, and or kind of get you involved somehow or get you upset somehow.
They like to push our buttons.
They like to push our buttons.
Because we're so much fun when our buttons are pushed. We're good television when our buttons are pushed.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question then. Somebody wrote in and said, anxiety. How to help overcome fear of seeing school people, for instance, peers and teachers, in the outside environment. One day my son ran into 3 peers in the mall at different stores, kids who are nice to him, and he was so stressed.
Yes.
More recently, he dashed back into the car to hide from someone who looked like a peer that was not so nice to him. He lost his lunchbox at school because of his fear of running into his peer if he walked around campus. Nothing physical happened, more an attitude from his peer. He's also anxious of sudden on-off sounds like a toaster beeping, etc. Tends to cover his ears for any fear, even if it's not sound related. Thank you for helping with my 1,000 questions, she wrote.
Sure. So I'm not sure if this is fear of particular people, because what it sounds like is it's kind of an embarrassment. It's a little bit different than fear of a particular stimulus or a person. The behavior that you described, by the way, although it does sound pretty extreme, is very, very, very common in children. How old is the child, did they say?
I don't believe she said.
Okay. So most children past elementary, usually this doesn't occur too much in elementary school. It's more like middle school age type behavior where children are embarrassed if they see a peer. It's really funny because I remember going through this with my own children where we'd be at a mall or something and they would say, I bet I'm going to see someone from my school here. God, I hope I don't see anybody from school here. Embarrassment becomes like a huge, huge factor in the middle school ages, and I think we all go through that to some extent. it's not just in public places. It is also, as you mentioned, like doing anything out of the ordinary at school. So in other words, our kids really, and sometimes it goes all the way to high school, our kids really, really want to be invisible. They don't want to stand out in any way, which is, you know, a lot of girls are afraid of what they're wearing because it's got to be so acceptable. A lot of boys are like, just want to not be seen. And I mean, this is a very common thing in school. So I don't know that it would, I mean, I can tell you the intervention for fear because I really don't know your child. I can tell you both. Like, what you would do if it's a fear of a particular person is you would do a systematic desensitization procedure, which basically means you would try to teach your child a relaxation type strategy, like deep breathing, you know, just breathing and counting, or closing your eyes and imagining a good scene, which is kind of like meditation. And you would pair that with progressive steps towards the feared stimulus. So for instance, you'd have a picture of the teacher or other peers that you would show the picture to the child and see if it evokes any kind of anxiety or fear, and then you would have the child do that relaxing activity. It could be anything. It could be listening to music or whatever else. Second thing is then you progress the hierarchy to the actual feared thing. So for instance, you go from a picture to, let's say, the picture and a voice recording of the person, to a video of the person, to the real person, and you would just expose your child to each continued level. I think that, honestly, most of the time, I mean, and I'm leaning towards very much that this would be more of an embarrassment thing. So it's not really fear of the individual, it's fear of failure in front of the individual. That is what embarrassment is, fear of failure of yourself. So it really doesn't matter who the person is, you are embarrassed because you feel like you're going to do something awkward. So in order to get over that, I think he will grow out of it. It really has a lot to do. We do a lot of stuff with our kids where we give them competence. Like, so if you are, we teach them things that make them very special. A lot of our kids are very talented in a lot of different ways, and so we help develop those talents so that they have something to stand on. But you should also give your child some ways to help him just cope. For instance, why do you think most kids, I'll give you two scenarios that most, and I'm assuming this is middle school age, and I don't know if it is or not, but why do you think that a lot of kids walk around with headphones on, or around them, with an iPad or something like that, and their iPod, and they're walking around, their headphones are on? That's because they look busy, no one can come and talk to them, and they're cool. Right. Okay, why do you think most kids in high school now are on their phone all the time? It's because they look busy, they look cool, and they do not have to look or interact with anyone. So give your child something that will help him feel cool and busy. I mean, it's really that simple. And or something that he can just mentally, depending on his level of understanding. You can also give him something that can mentally occupy him. So I always refer to, I'm from the Middle East, and in the Middle East, men have these, I've told you this before, they're like rosary beads, and they play with it. Like, it's a very common thing. If you go many countries in the Middle East, you have a man holding something that looks like a necklace, and they're just moving the beads. Now, here, of course, that would kind of in itself be odd. It would be sort of weird. But we do have other things. We have a lot of people have little rocks or stones they put in their pocket, and so you could put your hands, especially with boys, because boys' hands are always in their pockets. Yeah. So you could put your hands in your pocket, and then you have this thing, and perhaps, it's some memento from mom that will keep you safe. It really depends on your functioning of your child, but give him an object. Give him an object, and whenever he's embarrassed or starting to experience those feelings, just tell him, just put your hands in your pocket, you can feel that thing, you're completely cool, safe, whatever, and just keep doing your thing. It is also important that you look at his appearance, the coolness of his backpack, his lunchbox, whatever it is, because those are the things that actually, as ridiculous as they may be, they mean something to children.
Yeah, I try to explain this to my husband why I stress so much before Jem goes to school that everything has to be just right.
Perfect.
Because I don't want
him to fail.
Well, and I want to give him the best chance to
That's
fit
right.
in, and not stick out in a way, not to be the kid that they all want to pick on.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a million, people don't realize I don't even know how many studies on how your appearance significantly impacts your popularity. Significantly. So, everywhere from bullying research to getting jobs research, so your appearance is important. And so, as well as, of course, your preparedness, you never want to be unprepared for a situation or so on. But this is not something you should worry about too much. What I'm trying to say is that this happens with pretty much all kids. It's a very, very common thing.
And I always love that you remind us that these are tools that we have and you can choose not to use them. And I think sometimes people think, I just want to be clear, we're not saying that that's the most important thing,
absolutely.
what your child looks like. But if you can change one thing to make other kids interact with them differently, it's a great tool to have in your toolbox.
That's absolutely right.
Okay, and this next question kind of goes hand in hand with that. My 8th grader has been eating lunch by himself since 7th grade. In 6th, he would sit with peers, but not really engaging. He's usually worried about getting to class on time and feels left out of conversation. He doesn't know the topics that his peers are talking about and or not interested. School tells me friendships are organic. Isn't that helpful? I got very mad when I read that yesterday. I threatened to walk to your school and talk to them.
I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
It means that they don't want to work on it, that friendships just happen, so we're not going to put it in the IEP and we're not going to work on it, we're not going to facilitate it. It's lazy is what it is. But ask me how I really feel. Okay, and also told that he needs the time to decompress. He's told me sometimes he feels lonely and left out. To get him to be able to socialize, I think we need to work on active listening skills, comprehension, lowering anxiety, speech clarity, and expanding his experience. Gasp. We've tried social skills training, comprehension programs, etc. Exhausting schedule and cost benefit didn't quite work out. Would like him to get together with his peers to hang out, but what activities? Any ideas are appreciated.
Yes, you need to get in with a card supervisor. This is what we do. This is what we've been doing since, 20 years. I don't know if other ABA agencies do this, but this is a big part of what we do, and it's really, really important. And it's many, many, many steps. It's not just one. I love that you have, as a parent, identified those core deficits that you feel are leading to this problem for him. That's amazing that you've done that. And there's probably going to be even more. And that's why what we do is it's not just, the social skills group just, sort of gives your child certain, it's like practicing one karate move. You know what I mean? Whereas really what I want is for him to have a black belt.
Right.
So I kind of need to teach him everything that leads to appropriate social behavior. And it certainly sounds like he's extremely high functioning. And so when we assess, if you come to CARD, what you would do is you would start out with a skills assessment or skills index, and you would answer a ton of questions about him. And this would help us identify those areas such as the ones you listed, and many more. I mean, like, for instance, does he know how to join a group of kids? That's one lesson. Does he know how to interact when kids start to move away from him or look bored? Does he know how to identify subjects of interest to other kids? Does he know how to repair a conversation when people start talking about something else? Does he know how to keep the conversation equally on his own subject and theirs? I mean, there's a billion different lessons that are involved in teaching a child to have social abilities, social conversation abilities, paying attention to other people's body language, paying attention to the environment and the setting. There's so many things. You don't have to reinvent this. Whether or not you do it with us, this is what you do. You get on skills, which, I just realized you can do this without us if you're not in one of our locations, and that's fabulous. Get on skills, which is skillsforautism.com, and enroll your child and go ahead and answer the index questions. And it'll produce a profile of all the areas that he's not so good at. And then everything that he's not able to do or he's weak at will link to a lesson, like one of the lessons I just named. All the ones you listed there are there. I guarantee you we have all lessons for all of those. Mm-hmm. And you will get a lot of, depending on what his other issues are, mostly you should probably be getting lessons in social curriculum, in cognitive curriculum, cognition, and in executive functioning, I would imagine. You might also probably be getting some in the advanced language area. So those are the 4 curriculum areas that'll show the strongest area of deficit, and then that's great because that means you're getting more lessons offered to you in those sections. Anything he's not able to do at age level or really socially well will be put into his, let's say, program. And then you go into his program and you start selecting the youngest skill levels. All of our skill levels are by age, and you pull it into sort of a shopping cart, and that it's a monthly subscription. You have access to the whole thing, and then those are the ones that you start teaching. And how do you do that? Now you hire people. You can hire people who are involved with ABA. We call RBT, registered behavior technicians, or you could just hire people locally, like therapists, people out of high school, and then you can put them through our IBT website, which is you're going to have to iabehavioraltraining.com.
Yes.
And on IBT, there's a whole series of training modules for people. I would probably take them through the parent one. I think that's high level enough, or the teacher one. The professional one's a little bit too complex. I wouldn't put them through that. And then once that individual has taken those modules and learned the majority of just the procedural modules, you don't need to learn there's a lot of modules on there. Once they've learned the technique modules, they can implement all those programs and skills for you. They can work with your child to teach your child how to do those things. And depending on your child's schedule, I would really recommend that you do, 2 hours every day, because the person who's trained can help with a variety of different things. You'll get a lot out of skills. 2 hours every day is the very, very minimum, I'm assuming your child is like, around, I'm just guessing, around, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 9 or something, I don't know, 10.
They were saying 8th grader.
8th grader.
8th grader.
8th grader would be, let's see,
that's like 13.
Yeah, so that's great. And so therefore they're pretty high functioning, because sounds like this is all regular ed. And so I would say that you should be doing anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day, as well as try to cover him on the weekends. The more you do, the faster you get through this. Let's just put it that way.
And I would just add that in terms of the school setting, what made me so mad yesterday is sometimes schools get this, there's not much we can do about that because it's during lunch or recess. How I used skills year before last, because there were some social things that my son wasn't doing during recess and during lunchtime, and I went in and printed out from skills the IEP benchmarks for the goals that he needed for social skills. One of them was being able to persevere, ask a friend to interact, and then persevere until they did. I printed it out and took it to the IEP meeting, and they said, "Oh, is he having issues with that?" And I've been saying this forever.
Yes.
But it wasn't until I came in with something that was a benchmark that looked official that they paid attention, and they said, "Oh, well, we'll do a recreational assessment." And then they brought in a recreational expert who helped him to be able to do things, and they're no longer keeping that out of the IEP. It's one of his IEP goals that he interacts with kids during lunch, and they're accountable for it.
That's awesome.
So don't let them be off the hook. I think it's so important that we deal with those things at home first and foremost, but I would encourage you use skills in that way too, to hold the school accountable that, it says right in IDEA that one of the things that they have to be working on are not only educational goals, but life skills, which includes social things, and setting them up for being able to be successful in an occupation. Yeah. And if you don't have that component of being able to sit and socialize with other people, there's a good argument there.
That's a life skill, yeah. And thank you for bringing all that up, Shannon, because from being an old timer, I'm just so used to not depending on any other source and just kind of doing it myself.
But skills made that happen for us.
That's true, and also things have changed. I mean, depending on where you are, some of the schools are better. And Shannon is absolutely right. You need to have this in his IEP. That is just as important. And, not that what I always used to say or ask teachers was, how often do you look at the IEP? But it is important nevertheless for it to be in there. And you can actually, the school, depending again on what your resources are and how much you can push, schools can provide one-to-one aides that could be trained. If you go with an ABA program, there's 32 states now, I think, that have insurance funding, and so that could be funding that you receive to cover that sort of thing. It is a little bit harder to get intervention in schools, but if for this type of purpose, it is possible.
So we encourage you to do everything that you can, but it sounds like you've got a great young man there. Yes, good luck, and write back to us and let us know how things go. We took a question a little bit earlier in the hour about a giggly 13-year-old, and we just wanted to share with you that person wrote back and said, thank you for taking my question. You hit it on the nail. My giggly 13-year-old is high-functioning autism in typical classroom. We sometimes ignore and continue to teach. We sometimes pause and ask what's funny, which is what you thought might be happening. Yeah. And they said, yes, we will also look at yeast, and thanks for bringing that up. So
that's great.
We love it when you guys write back and tell us, that's immediate gratification for us.
Yeah, so, either way. I mean, and if we don't hit it on the nail, and if we're in a different place, please tell us. We'd
like to hear any suggestions from you and Dr. Doreen on how to have the morning run smoother. Don't we all want that?
Yes.
My kindergarten son with autism and ADHD can take 30 minutes with a visual schedule and several verbal prompts to get dressed on a really good day. Though his clothes hang already matched in his closet, ready to pull out, and his dressing schedule, visual and written, is always available. His bedtime is 7:30 p.m. plus 20 minutes reading time while in bed. Reading is a must. It's very calming for him. He barely wakes up at 7 o'clock a.m. with my help. School starts at 7:45 a.m., about 7 minutes away. This is the first week of school and his first all-day program. I feel like I have no choice but to get his meal ready and dress himself while he is still laying down, or we will never make it. And today we were slightly tardy. Thank you. And the equation is always different. Yeah, I do too.
What an amazing parent. You're so on top of things.
Yeah.
Here's what I would do. We always try to teach these things, and you and I have talked about this before. We always try to teach things when it's happening rather than realize that it's a task that you need to teach separate from the time that it's happening. So in the morning is not a good time to want to teach this. What I would suggest you do is just kind of do it the rest of the week. Just handle it the rest of this week. However, don't dress him. Do not go back a step. You've already done a lot. Let him keep going. Just nudge him, urge him. What you really need to do, and you can practice this on the weekend, or you can practice it, after school tonight. What you need to do, he already has a schedule, which is fantastic. Good job. You have a lot of cool stuff going. Make sure the schedule is pretty comprehensive. In other words, make sure the visual schedule has the getting up and getting dressed, but then also the brushing teeth, grooming, and having breakfast. So you have all phases of it. You could divide it into 3 sections, right? You can have, the grooming stuff, the getting dressed stuff, and the breakfast stuff. So you have all of that on a visual schedule, and all you need to do is put a timer on it. All you need to do is time right now, how long it takes for him to do it by himself, and that's your baseline. And then you will start to reduce the time. And the way that you do that is one at a time. So you'll do one section, let's say the dressing, and you will literally have the timer in front of you, and you'll sit with him and he'll do it. And as he's getting dressed, you'll be like, it's running out, you're running out of time, you have 15 seconds, you have 2 minutes, whatever it is, as it runs out. So he speeds up a little bit. And you help him stay within that time frame, and you do it at very tiny increments. So like let's say his baseline for getting dressed is right now 15 minutes, which is kind of high. So what you do is you don't suddenly say, now we're going to do it in 10 minutes. What you do is you say, now we're going to do it in 14 minutes and 30 seconds, and that's successful. Then, you know, a couple hours later you practice it and you say, we're going to do it 14 minutes, and that's great. And then you keep it at 14 minutes, and you do this over a course of time, a few days or evenings and exercises, so that it doesn't rush him, so that it becomes sort of an ingrained behavior. And then really all you do is you set a timer up in the morning, and he will respond to the timer. And this works with every child, every individual. You can speed up their activity time as long as it's reasonable. Now, his school starts at 7:45, I think, and he has a 7 minutes away.
And he's getting up at 7 a.m.
Right. So if you want him to be in class at 7:45, and let's give 5 minutes for just, you know, walking from the front of the school to his class. So that makes it 7:40. Instead of 7 minutes away, let's give you 10 minutes or him 10 minutes to get there. So that makes it 7:30, and that's kind of tight. So that gives him 30 minutes to do all this other stuff. I think that's pretty good. I think if you want to be safe until he gets there, wake him up at 6:45 and then let him do that. Waking up is your least problematic issue. I still wake up my high school son. You know, he sleeps through a bomb going off next to his head. But so that, as long as you can wake him at a reasonable time, and then he will, you know, fit into the time frame. But make sure that if you wake him earlier, he doesn't delay the process more. You need the timer. You need the timer in place.
And I just want to say, we did this with our son.
Yeah, and it worked.
And my son is all about playing games, and always has been. That's always, you know, and winning. He really wants to win.
There you go.
And he gets a reward for winning. And so I had trouble getting him to walk up the sidewalk to get to our house when I would have groceries. And so we would race.
Yes.
And then what happened with the getting dressed, because it would take an hour sometimes for him, but he knew how to dress himself. But we talk about fluency on the show all the time. It's not enough to get dressed. You have to do it with enough speed that it actually is a life skill.
It's useful. That's correct.
And I didn't always use a timer. I would count sometimes.
Yes.
We got it to the point where he could get himself dressed in a count of 22. Okay?
Yeah, that's
a count
awesome.
of 22.
That's awesome.
And getting him up in the morning when he was little, I was just remembering and having a warm fuzzy moment that we would always say to him, because the first thing he would have to do is go to the bathroom in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And we would always have it be a race. I would say to him, quick, get there before Daddy gets there. And my husband would be moving slow like he was going to beat him. And I would say, he's going to beat you, he's going to beat you. And Jem would run out of bed to get there.
That's it.
And my husband would do a big, you know, my husband who's very funny and a comedic actor, and he would do this, oh, you beat me again. How did you do that? Now, he's 11. This doesn't work anymore. But now the thing that gets him out is the shower. I put the shower on, and I say, you got to get there now, or the warm water's
Water
gonna run
is
out.
gone.
And he runs out of bed to get into the shower because he wants to take the warm shower.
Yeah. Those are fantastic ideas as well. And really, a lot of kids love the competitiveness. I mean, I remember with my little one, I used to be like, who's going to get ready first, me or you?
Right.
And so I'd go to my room and start getting ready, and she'd be done in 2 seconds, you know, because she wanted to beat me. But it really does that's a great idea, the competitive factor. And also going back to what I was talking about earlier, make sure, please, that you reinforce, obviously. I can't believe I forgot to say that. Blasphemy.
It's always implicit. It's always implicit.
Please reinforce every level of fastness, even at the 14 minutes and 30 seconds. There has to be a really significant reward, and that would have to do with whatever's meaningful to him.
Yeah. Jem would try to get it in 22 seconds so that he could have blackberries with breakfast.
There you go.
He was going to get blackberries anyway, but like I turned it into a thing, and then he did it in 22 seconds, and he got blackberries.
22 seconds.
22 seconds, and he could get fully dressed.
That's
and then it was
crazy.
done. It was wonderful. You know, and the clothes were already there and laid out.
Of course.
But 22 seconds, you can't beat that. It makes it much easier in the morning. Okay, so moving on here, I wanted to go to this next question about a 13-year-old who is obsessed with a few things, one of which is cutting long hair.
Oh.
He watches YouTube haircut videos and cuts tissue paper as hair. He used to cut a doll's hair but stopped when we had a discussion about damaging toys. He wants to watch me get my long hair cut short. Do you think that will feed or stop the obsession? I'll let him cut my hair if that would stop the obsession. He thinks it's funny when a ponytail is cut short. We cannot think of a replacement behavior or anything productive to channel this behavior. And thank you. And she goes on to say, part 2, are obsessions his comforting tool? If so, what to do if it's non-productive? Current obsessions are, again, cutting hair, pretend, looking at model airplanes, building airports out of blocks, watching silly videos on YouTube, and games on the phone. Thank you for creating this wonderful show. I'm so happy to have found it and my go-to place when I have time. We're so glad you found us and we're thrilled that you're here.
That's terrific. I'd love to hear that. Thank you. I don't know if this is an obsession. You named so many different things that could be considered leisure activities, and I don't know if he's rotating amongst them. Then he's not obsessing on any one or the other, because that was a lot of different things he does. I'm not talking about the hair stuff, but I'm talking about all the other things.
The model airplanes, the building airports, the watching videos, and playing games on the phone. That is some variety.
And it's pretty typical of boys. And what age was he?
13.
Yeah, I mean, that's like... Honestly, if you let any 13-year-old boy nowadays pick what they're going to do, those sound... I mean, the fact that he's not just on his phone playing is good.
Yeah,
but let's
you're
talk
doing
about,
better than me.
Yeah, let's talk about the hair. The hair situation does sound like a strange obsession. He might become a very fantastic hairdresser going forward, by the way.
That's what I'm thinking.
When you have an obsession of that type, you need to form it into something. And, you know, if this is something he's into, he might become fantastic with this. So let's not forget that. Let's put that in our back pocket for now, because he's 13. So it is not going to stop the obsession just by watching you cut your hair. It's not. Or by
letting him cut her hair?
I wouldn't let him cut your hair. That's a very weird thing to do anyway, and it's dangerous, and nothing is going to come of it.
Okay.
It's just not necessary. I do think that you need to redirect it. And I think that you should look at other cutting activities. Hair, there's other things that are similar texture, you know, not necessarily exactly the same, but there are. I mean, you can buy different textures that are similar to that and see if he likes cutting those. I mean, he can start doing, you know, cutting paper designs, which would be very appropriate. And perhaps that would give him, maybe regular paper is too thin. Maybe if he starts to cut out shapes into like cardboard, it's gives him the same kind of thing. Find out what it is about the obsession of the hair thing. You know, hair is kind of interesting because it could be how the hair falls when it's cut. You mentioned that it's a ponytail. He's watching videos. Find out if it comes from a video or something. I don't, you know, find out where the obsession is coming. Redirect it to something typical. It doesn't have to be similar looking, the activity. It just has to fulfill whatever is staying on his mind, whatever it is he's obsessing on. So sometimes, you know, we try to replace certain behaviors with others, and it's not about the topography of the behavior, it really is about the function. Yes, a couple of days ago, I'm currently doing training for my staff here, and I have a really lovely group of trainees here who are becoming supervisors. They're all board certified people who are fantastic, great group. I'm enjoying it. And I mentioned to them that one of my kids has this spitting behavior, and we realized that nobody would ever guess that we realized the function of it was nothing anyone would ever guess is the visual, how it looks when he spits. And then they had two different kids, each that had the same issue. It was a visual function, and nobody would guess that it's a visual function for spitting. So sometimes what I'm trying to say is that you know, you think he's cutting hair, it has something to do with hair. Not at all necessarily. It could have to do with how the hair falls and what it looks like. It could have to do with just the texture. It could have to do with the look of a ponytail. I mean, find out what the actual thing is that he's obsessing on, because then you'll find a replacement that helps, that is possible to replace it with. And then stop him from having to do that thing. Like, in other words, once you've found other replacement behaviors, you need to redirect him to that and not allow him to cut hair or to be into the hair thing. And if he talks about the hair thing, change the subject, just go on to something else.
So when we're looking at how this might serve him later on, he's 13 right now, at what point would she look at getting a mentor?
Great. Just see how long what happens. Like, in other words, and again, this is really hard for me because I don't know the child.
Right.
Again, it has to do with his level of functioning. If he's at a point where you can actually kind of have a discussion with him about it, you can tell him, we're going to come talk about this later, not now. Like, you're too young to be doing this or whatever. Now we need to focus on this. But at some point, like, if the obsession kind of so this is what typically happens. We all have obsessions and we learn to hide them from the public. Okay? That's the honest truth. So if he learns to hide it from the public, you'll be happy. It'll be fine. But you'll know that it's still there. You'll know that he still seeks out things that have the pattern of hair or the structure of hair or the texture or whatever it is. In which case, probably, and again, I don't know his functioning level. I mean, you might have a child where you're hoping that he'll go to college and do something else. I don't know. But if it continues to be something like that, then I would probably be looking more like 17 or 18. I'd be looking at school, cosmetology school, which is sort of at regular occupational centers. They have those programs.
Yeah.
And then it might be the right thing for him.
Yeah, might very well be. Okay, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to continue with one quick question here. Hi, Dr. Doreen. I have 2 kids with CARD. The 25-month-old was getting 5 hours through Regional Center and now getting 40 hours through my insurance. I asked Regional Center to help with copays, and they told me they can only help with companies up to the hours that they are giving him 5. Is that true? And she goes on to say that she's in the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center, and thanks.
No, they can do whatever they want to do. And by the way, I'm so happy that we're doing 40 hours with your 25-month-old. I hope he or she does really, really well. No, that has nothing to do with it. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So in other words, what they're saying is, because we only approved 5 hours, we're only going to give you 5 hours worth of copays, or copays to correlate to 5 hours, which I think is garbage. You need to go after the copay. I would strongly suggest that you go after getting your copays from the regional center. I think it's makes perfect sense. With 40 hours, that means you have sessions all day, every day. Hopefully your copay is structured on a 24-hour basis, so you only get 1 copay a day rather than a copay for every session. And who can we recommend who would be able to help you?
There are advocates that can help with the regional center. Sometimes that costs you as much as what you're looking to do. I will tell you, with the regional center, one of the things that a lot of us have found to be effective is to be a very nice squeaky wheel that is consistent. So you call and you keep calling and you're so nice and you're so polite.
I wonder if 211 would help some.
I bet 211 would help. And I would also suggest you get on a group and find out if somebody else in that regional center has had that rule broken. So then you can say, I heard, and even if they haven't, and I didn't say this, so this is just between you and I, we're not broadcasting out to a bunch of people, right? But you can say, I know that somebody else is getting that. Sometimes that greases the skids, as long as you stay nice. And one of the key things to do is, if you keep calling, wait until you can't get your person and then ask for the officer of the day. And sometimes that's what gets it done. Mm-hmm. A little trick that you didn't get from me.
It's very tough, and you have 2, so it's a little bit hard, but
absolutely calling 211, LA 211, and ask them for some help and advice about how you can get the regional center to do that. But again, try to find another person that has had them break that rule, because they're different people, and sometimes the communication doesn't get there, and sometimes it's a way that they can say, no, and the squeaky wheels get the grease.
Yes, and 211, I don't know if you actually pick up the phone and just dial 211.
That's all you do. You dial 211.
It's an organization that really does help with a variety of different things, such as getting you funding for the regional center.
We had them on the show last week, and Patricia Herrera, and one of the things that she said is that if you're having an issue with the regional center, they'll keep you on the phone, and they'll get regional center on the phone with you at the same time, so you're having a three-way conversation.
Great.
Which, man, and it's free, and they'll help you. So definitely, I think that's a good suggestion too.